Hey anime lovers, you're listening to Hey Anime. I'm Brody, and today we're talking to Rebecca about Wolf's Rain. Welcome to the show, Rebecca.
Thank you for having me here.
So, how did you first discover Wolf's Rain? What got you into the series?
It was actually years ago when I was a little bit younger. I was getting into dark anime, and Wolf's Rain came onto my spectrum, and I started watching it, and it got really interesting. I like Sume, Hiei, and Toboy. They were the most interesting of the three, and there's, of course, always the bad boy.
Yeah, I agree. I wasn't vibing with Kiba as much. He was a little bland for me, but I got pretty attached to Hige the most out of them, but Topaway was a strong second for me. After looking into it, I was pretty surprised to find that a lot of the fandom doesn't like Topaway.
Yeah, there is a lot of hit and miss with poor Toboy.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. Like, his was getting into spoilers a little early here, but his death was the one that it hit me. The other ones, not so much. I a little bit felt like the end there rushed those bits, but Topaway's got me.
Yeah, for me as well. His death was the hardest. Sorry for spoilers, everyone.
We're assuming everybody tuning in is giving the series a chance at least. Either they've given up on whatever we're talking about or they've seen it, hopefully. But yeah, the series, I was really into it for probably the first chunk up until there was like 4 recap episodes in a row.
Yeah, they did do that. It was a little bit like, why?
Especially in, like, I can understand one recap episode back in the day when everything was weekly on TV. A lot of people might have missed stuff, but when I was watching straight through, binging it, I was like, okay, this is getting a bit much. So the one recap episode, I was like, okay, I'll power through just because it's part of the experience of how people originally probably watched the show. But then by the third one, I was like, okay, let's watch this on double speed.
Yeah.
And I mean, also just after those episodes, I wasn't as into the series as much. I felt like I was hoping the villains would get a little bit better. I felt the villains were a little lackluster. I didn't really understand their motivations hugely, other than the one guy was trying to bring back his wife and then she died?
I think he was trying to resurrect her, and by using the flower as well as paradise, the promise, that's what led to it. And him hoping for the promise would bring her back with him, with her.
Okay, yeah, and oh my god, yeah, the word paradise, having binged the series, I can say that word has lost all meaning to me. Oh my god, the amount of times I had to hear them say paradise I think I powered through the series in just over 2 days. And by the end, I was like, okay, I could go a little bit without hearing the word paradise for a bit.
Yeah, that's why back in the day we used to enjoy having the weeks in between to let us process it.
Oh, I know, right? Like, part of me misses those days, but part of me was also, I had a hard time tuning into everything weekly. I was really bad. I'd be like, oh, what time is it? Oh, it's Friday at 8. I was like, oh, well, I missed Naruto and I missed One Piece.
Yeah, and of course, don't forget Bleach for that time.
Oh, for us, Bleach, I think, was like 9 o'clock. So usually I was sitting down ready to watch. Bleach and Inuyasha were 2 big ones for me growing up.
For me, whenever I heard the Bleach song and the way they put up the art for it, I immediately turned it off because I thought, oh, this is some hippie shit. I did get past it, though.
Oh, that's funny, because I was so hooked on Bleach because of that theme song. And then nowadays, like, Bleach, like, I don't think I watched past... I made it into the Arrancars for Bleach, but then I kind of just fell off during that arc. But back to Wolf's Rain, who's your favorite character? Like, if you had to pick a solid one.
A solid one would be Sume.
Sume, why do you like him the most?
Because, of course, back then I was always into the bad boys like Wolverine and everything like that. So, because of Sume's character and his rough self resilientness and also challengingness made him appealing to his character. He also helped bring across the other characters' personalities a little bit more by having them even headbutt with them or see if they could try and get to him.
Yeah, I liked how he went from being the skeptic of the group to being full on and believing in Kiba's cause and everything. I wish Kiba had a bit more to him than just going on instinct and being obsessed with Chessa, but other than that, I agree. Sume played off everybody very well. I think for me, it might be the fact that he was voiced by Ty from Digimon, and that was a big thing for me as a kid. But Hige was definitely my guy.
Yeah, Hiei was also a good character.
The thing I was a little bit confused about was they made him out to be like a traitor at one point and stuff, and I felt like that was a bit rushed. Like, I didn't really fully understand what was going on with that whole thing. Like, I understand it had something to do with the collar and Jagra, but I wasn't really too sure. They called him number 23, and then that didn't really go anywhere other than, like, where were the other, 1 through 22?
I think what happened was they always kept leading up that they all died. So Hiei was the one that knew to like really work the system with his illusion capabilities to survive better than the others.
Yeah. I was a little bit confused about the transforming from humans to wolves at first and stuff, whether, like, what was going on there. It wasn't actually till after the series when I started looking into a bit of other stuff about it once I was not afraid of spoilers, where I kind of started to understand it a bit more. But part of me loves that in anime where there's things that aren't completely spelled out for you, where on a rewatch or looking into the series more, you discover new layers to appreciate.
Yeah, there's also a lot of other people who have rewatched the series have also pointed out some little flaws. Like some people forgot to paint a wolf's foot in one of the scenes. People have taken this thing apart afterwards too to show the like small little things that they may have missed. But I was rewatching it to make sure I'm up par with you because it's been a few years. And I did notice because I knew the story that even in the very first episode, when they run away in the snow, you don't see men's footprints, you see dog footprints or wolf footprints. So that also gives you the idea that it's an illusion that they create of themselves, how they see themselves if they were human.
Oh, that is so cool. I didn't realize that. That is super cool.
And also shows you very quickly when Tobey in the first episode fell and he reached to grab him, Tobey was probably grabbing onto the pole with his teeth and was accepting Sume's bite to help bring him up. And that's why they did the quick switch from the face to him reaching out was actually really his jaws clenching onto Toboy.
That's so cool. Yeah. No, I'm not surprised. Like, I haven't really given it a full watch yet, but I know that Cowboy Bebop is done by a lot of the same people as Wolf's Rain, and that has a lot of extra layers on rewatches and stuff as well too. So I'm not too surprised that all that effort and stuff is put in. It's a little funny that they do all that work and then somebody forgets to draw Wolf's foot though.
Well, they forgot the color in the foot. The foot's still there. They
Oh,
just forgot the color it in.
okay, that's kind of funny that they put in so much effort to make the footprints wolf prints and then somebody doesn't color a foot. I guess that's rushing production more than effort, though.
Yeah, I think that's why even many animators are still screaming like we need more time for us to do the details that we actually want to do and show our talents.
Yeah, the conditions for a lot of those animators is pretty rough from what I've heard, and a lot of the manga creators aren't having much better luck. Pumping things out that quickly can't be easy.
No, totally. Like I actually noticed though in some of the newer animes where they make references to their studios to show how long it takes to do the process. I think it was the Diary of the Daily Life of the Immortal, where they actually did an episode showing their studio and animating themselves into the scene was pretty funny when you could see the quick little nod to, I'm here, I am doing this work.
Yeah, that's so cool. I have a 7-year-old and she was having a hard time understanding that, like, she loves to draw, but she was like, she's so against, she's like, I don't know what I'd ever want to be for a job. And then we were watching Bluey, and there was an episode where, like, the whole thing is about puppets and not being real. And then Bluey's like, what if I'm a puppet? And then it cuts to, like, the animation process, and it shows them animate just like a 5-second little bit, and how, like, they fast forward through, like, the actual process that goes through on the computer, and then they play it and show how quick, like, all the work that goes into just like a few seconds of animation. And my daughter was mind blown, and she was like, okay, so, like, people do this as like a job. And, like, now she's like dead set on being an artist and stuff. But, like, it was cool to see what actually goes into animation, because I didn't even know as an adult how much work went into 5 seconds of animation.
Yeah, another episode that actually did that was actually Beavis and Butthead, where they were in class, and even Darla actually shows up in that episode, where they say, that's it? We made hundreds and hundreds of these people being killed and murdered, and it only took, like, no time for them to show it all in one motion.
Yeah, I totally forgot about the Beavis and Butthead one. Yeah, no. Oh, God, that brings me back. My mom used to hate us watching that.
I think my mom really hated when I was watching Ren and Stimpy.
Okay, so we didn't realize that there was the adult party cartoon for that. And me and a buddy, we ended up putting on the adult party cartoon one, where it's just like complete raunch. And yeah, no, that was the last time we were ever allowed to watch Ren and Stimpy.
Yeah, they went places in that show, not like they do today. Today is very controlled.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So, how did you feel about the ending of Wolf's Rain? Can you explain to me exactly what happened? Because I was a little confused. It kind of just, everybody's back, the world seems different. What did they accomplish?
Well, you actually knew, even in the applied thing in the very beginning, that the world was dying, that the world was not even really safe except for those who lived under the dome. So it was making the opening of restarting the world. And even it was implied with the hunter that was chasing them down that he was actually a wolf reincarnated as a human, and he forgot that he was a wolf. So when they showed off the end of the movie, it's basically a restart of everything, but doing things differently to keep the world a little bit more alive. And the wolves actually reincarnated as humans and forgot their journey that they did together and living close, but not actually fully connected, like when they were, what's the word for when
A
wolves
pack?
are, yes, a pack. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, because the ending there, the version I watched, they played the ending twice. Like, so I was sitting there and I was like, okay, wait, I've watched the ending twice now. And I was like, I'm still super confused on what's going on. Like, I understood the world was dying and everything. And then, yeah, I don't know. And what was, I really, really enjoyed the first half of the series. And then the second half, it lost me a little bit. Like, I was a little bit confused. I felt like the series could have used a bit more time to explain things. The humans' deaths all were pretty abrupt to me. I didn't really feel satisfied with any of them, especially Cher. What happened to her? I'm still confused about that. It was like something came down and, like, their car went flying, but, like, I wasn't entirely sure what happened there.
I think that was implying as they get closer to paradise. I think it was also notifying. They all said that even in the beginning, they repeated over time in the show that the only ones who can get to paradise are the wolves. And the villain actually said they're human, so they will never see paradise. So their route, them trying to finish the end, was always never going to be true. So I'm guessing they got caught up with the world dying on their way to paradise. So I think during their mission of them getting the flower and traveling, that the world was dying faster and faster behind them, and what got the humans was the dying of the earth. That's my understanding anyways.
Okay, that makes a little bit more sense to me. Yeah, I was a little bit let down because I think Hub was one of my favorite characters, honestly. Like, and then he fell off a cliff, and then he was like, he locks eyes with, his name's leaving my brain now. Before he hits the ground, he stayed to talk to Topaway while Topaway was dying.
I think it was Sume, wasn't it?
Sume, yes. His name was out of my head for some reason, but yes. Sume and him lock eyes, and I was like, oh, Sume can save him. Nope. Sume just sticks his hand out. Now that you're telling me that it's an illusion and that he's a wolf, it makes more sense to me. Like, I was like, come on, grab him! And he doesn't have arms, so that makes more sense to me now.
It just made it more of a somatic experience when you think, oh, they can reach him, versus, oh yeah, they don't have hands. They don't have the thumb to really pull. All they have is their teeth to really do the things that they can do. The same as you see your dogs trying to figure out things, grabbing their sticks. All they have is their teeth.
Yeah, and like, I feel like the thing of like his illusion reaching out his hand, it's like he wants to help, but he's not actually able to, kind of thing, I guess, eh?
I think that's also implied in that moment. They wish they were human, that their illusions weren't just illusions, that they could actually save the people in front of them the way a human could.
Yeah, and I don't know. Topaway's moment with Sume right before that, though, when he's dying and Sume's there talking to him, and that got me. That was where I wasn't huge on Sume up until that point, but like, that was where I was like, okay, I'm in. You won me over, man.
Yeah, I think it was also always leading up to that moment by showing his disdain and everything, when it actually showed that even in the very beginning of the episode, you forget that he was there for the humans. He wanted to be there for the humans. He wanted to make his own pact. But he also knew at the same time he couldn't let them close, because if they actually reached out and touched them, they wouldn't feel skin, they would feel fur. And because of that, he also made sure he was always distant.
Yeah, and it makes so much more sense why he couldn't help that kid in the beginning who fell. And yeah, no, like, realizing that it was all an illusion, this whole series makes so much more sense.
It's because they heavily relied on the illusions too much when they were no longer around humans, is where it made it harder for the viewer to figure out the two, that there's illusions and then there is the wolves themselves.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So, what do you think you would change about the series if you could change anything about Wolf's Rain?
I guess it would be, as you said, the replays of the 3 episodes. I think I would have changed that, and maybe focus more on developing more of the characters and giving them more reasons why they're being this way. Like giving more of a background to Hiei for being a traitor, like more of his story of his background and what happened to the other ones before him. So that way we can see his survival and why is he so plump and why they keep making jokes to him being so plump. And maybe making him a little bit more plumper in his drawing, so that way when he's doing his illusion, you also see the plumpness too that they're referring to.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So, you mentioned the hunter was a reincarnated wolf. I didn't catch that at all. Where did that come up?
It's when the villain shows up and grabs him and is about to murder him, that he says, oh, you're not even a human, you're just a wolf that forgot you're a wolf.
Okay, yes, I remember that line, and I was so confused by that.
Yeah, that's what he meant by that. He was a reincarnated wolf that forgot his roots when he was reincarnated.
Okay, that makes sense. I did one part that I don't know what about it made me laugh, but I laughed hysterically at the part where Cheza jumped out of the aircraft and was like spinning towards the ground when right before they first meet her. Something about that, I just thought it looked really funny.
It was also the play on the idea that she's a flower maiden. So, when flowers, when they leave their stem, they float down in a spiral, like from a tree. So they were playing on the idea that she's a flower tree. She's probably like, oh my goodness, a sakura tree, or a tree that had flowers that would spiral down when they fall. So that way they don't plummet, but they just spin.
Okay, yeah. A lot of symbolism in the show, I guess, that I didn't really pick up on a first watch.
It's okay. It takes a lot of watches to really get the idea of where they're trying to go. And then once you know which areas to skip, saying, "Okay, this is the stupid part. I'm skipping this," and then get to the other understanding where they actually use a lot of symbolism and a lot of play on words, like how she was a flower maiden when they had her fall. She fell like a flower.
Okay, yeah, that's interesting. So, would you say you're satisfied with the way the series ended, or do you wish it ended differently?
Maybe, as you said, a little bit more detail into each of the wolves' deaths. So we also, I think it's because of how emotional they made Toboy's death was that we didn't want to feel any more of these characters die in front of us one by one. So it may have felt rushed because we are already still grieving for Toboy.
Yeah, they were kind of just back to back to back without any breathing room. And it was like by the time they got to Sume, I was a little checked out emotionally, honestly. Like, I don't know if it was just the fact that I didn't realize until I was like, oh, Sume's dying. It was just like his leg bleeding at first. And I was like, okay, maybe they're subverting us on this. Maybe he's injured, but not. And then he's dying. And I was like, oh, okay. So it must be like an artery thing where he's like bleeding out then. Because I didn't think he was going to die from just that.
I think he also went through a lot of also internal attacks too when he was fighting the other guy. That it just finally got to him. And also maybe what also got to him was the broken heart of losing Tollboy and being there and watching his friend go, who has always been his support, always been reaching out to him, and now he has no one to reach out for him to stop him from going off on his own.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, oh, and the fact that Hige made him put him out himself.
Yeah, and that risk. And they always keep tying back, even when I was rewatching it just recently, trying to make sure I'm fresh enough to keep up with you. They also implied his death in a way, too. Like, he was always going to be the person to be the first to die.
Okay.
Because in the first episode, showed him almost falling off, someone was there to save him. In the second episode, he stepped on a landmine, but the landmine was so old that it didn't activate until later, which then made the robots wake up and then almost kill him. And then it took his friends to also be there to try and save him without him even realizing, because of his inexperience, because of his youth, to know to always be on alert.
Okay. Yeah. There's definitely layers to the show when you talk to somebody who's more versed than me on it, that's for sure.
That's why I kind of recommended it, because there is a lot more going on. Sure, the first time you run through it, you're like, you get hooked on the characters. There's some bits, of course, that you're just like, what the hell did you just do? And then there's the bits of how they died and everything. But it's when you rewatch it, when you know the story, that you're able to see more of what they've hidden and put out to you in the very first place. That you weren't hooked on the story anymore. Now you're able to see more as you rewatch.
One thing I'm now kind of confused about, though, it just popped into my head. Do- doesn't one of them bend bars with their hands in an episode? But their hands are just supposed to be illusion.
That's their teeth. Whenever they refer to their hands, they're actually using their jaws to do the things that you see. They did that in the first episode where they would cut back what you think was done. You actually see, because I actually rewatched the episode, so that's why I have it fresh in my mind. When they do a flashback where the human comes back to see the bars broken, you actually see the bite marks, the tears, the claw marks of the teeth cutting into the metal to show that's their teeth actually causing the damage, because in their minds, hands are their jaws. So whenever you see them trying to do things with their hands, it's really their teeth. So when you see Sume holding up the knife, that's his teeth being bared to show that he is a menace, he is a threat. And he does that through the illusion by showing, all right, everyone's scared of a knife, so I'm going to illusion a knife so that way people will know I am ready to fight. when it's really his teeth are being bared. He is growling, he is showing his anger, showing his will to fight and make sure he will become the one on top.
Okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That is cool. Yeah, no, I'm really glad I watched the series. It's definitely something I enjoyed. I'm still a little, I don't really know how I feel about the ending so far. I feel like most anime tends to kind of lose me in the third act. I can only think of a couple that I'm really satisfied with the way they end, but I always enjoy the journey at least, and that's kind of why I've stuck with anime after all this time.
I think that's also the reason I also stuck with anime. Like, sometimes the story ends abruptly, but I think that's also a reflection on life itself. Like, we are all on our own journeys. We always have the action, we have the friendships that we gain and lose. But then sometimes even our deaths are questionable. Like, we get to this point, we've done everything possible, and we don't have a good death. And I think that's what they're also acknowledging in anime. It's when things don't go the way you were hoping, is also the acknowledgement that sometimes you won't get a good death, sometimes you won't get a good end, but it's always the journey that's always makes the more meaning to your life, that gets you to your death.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and you're definitely right. Like, real life is never as neat and tidy as fictional stories like to make us think. Things end abruptly more often end neatly. And no, it was definitely a good series. I was definitely glad you recommended it by the end of it. Something I'd never actually even heard of before you recommended it to me.
It was one of those shows that didn't have a lot of popularity because of, I'm guessing, the dark storytelling and everything, and how everything is always about this one goal that they're all trying to reach, that they were all called for. All the wolves could feel the calling. Even the hunter, who was actually a wolf, didn't even realize he was also being called. And with Blue being a half dog, half wolf, and how she even understood the call.
Yeah, Blue was an interesting character. We didn't even really talk about Blue very much, but I kind of seen that twist coming of Blue being part wolf. By the time it actually happened, I started to think maybe not, because that was one of the things I think they paced very well, was Blue being with the hunter for a long enough time where I started out thinking, oh, that's probably part wolf. And then by the time it actually happened, I was like, oh, yeah, that had completely left my mind.
Yeah, and it's that storytelling where you already know what's going to happen, but they prolong it so long that makes you question it to the point that it comes back to your face and saying, oh yeah, she's also a part wolf. But they actually did do that in the very beginning. When the hunter talks to her saying, I know you're part wolf and part dog, maybe that's why you're so good at hunting them. He did actually say that very quickly in a sentence in the very beginning.
Okay, yeah, I must have missed that line or forgot about it or something, because, yeah, I don't remember that part, but yeah,
It was those quick, small details.
yeah, and I feel like that's the upside to having those weeks in between. Back in the day, like, you used to be able to stew on the episode and think it over, and now when you binge things, it's like, oh, on to the next thing, and so many of those fine details don't have time to sink in.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, thank you so much for coming on and talking Wolf's Rain. It was awesome getting to experience the series. I'm super glad you recommended it.
No problem. Thank you for having me, and continue to have great podcasting series.
Awesome.
Thanks for listening. If you like the show, make sure you follow us and rate 5 stars and share it with all your friends. If you'd like to be a guest, email us at pod.fandoms@gmail.com. Or you can message us on Instagram, Twitter, Blue Sky, or Reddit. You can also join our Discord to chat with other fans, suggest questions for upcoming episodes, or find out about our new shows dropping soon. If you want to be super deadly, you can join our Patreon as well. Thanks for all your support. See you next time.